Hello, my name is Brittany Schroeder, and I'm a third-year MLA student. I'd like to start off by thanking the Columbus Foundation, the Knowlton School of Architecture, the CCC Legacy, who I worked closely with, Jake Boswell and Justin Parsher for their feedback as I was going through the process of writing this grant, and everyone else who has helped me on the process of my directed research, which has been a very long, daunting, excruciatingly wonderful process. Today, I will be speaking to you about the legacy of the Civilian Conservation Corps, which I will refer to as the CCC throughout the remainder of this presentation. The CCC was a relief program started by Franklin D. Roosevelt administration at the height of the Great Depression. The purpose of the program was to provide jobs in the fields of conservation for single men between the ages of 18 to 25. Men would live in the outdoor setting for 6-month terms, and almost all their wages would be sent back to their family, which was roughly $30 a month back then, but $410 given inflation. The CCC is most notably recognized in the national parks, where they have built a large percentage of the transportation infrastructure still utilized today. For my ARTA research, I was interested in their planting legacy, which is often overlooked today due to the perceptions of wilderness, but it should be noted that from 1933 to 1942, most of the landscape architects were working in partnership with the federal government, developing park systems. The CCC is believed to have roughly planted 2.3 billion trees in their 9 years of service. And according to CCC historian Neil Mayer, this accounts for half the trees planted in United States history. Part of the reason I care so much about this particular topic is because I believe myself to be a successor of their work. Prior to graduate school, I spent over 2 years working on federal lands for a nonprofit agency partnered with AmeriCorps that was focused on conservation work on federal lands for the people between the ages of 18 and 25. I attribute a lot of my character, work ethic, and appreciation for the American landscape to this period in my life. For my ARTA travel, I planned a domestic trip across the eastern United States in search of a particular planting type that I knew very little about and whether I would actually find it on my journey. This planting type is known as a plantation, and this takes a very clear form of conifers planted in linear rows. Since many of the forests on the eastern United States are secondary growth, I was curious on whether it would be possible to locate these clearly planted plots in the otherwise naturalistic or wild forest. So this was the trip I planned. And this is the trip I took. So you can see it lightly, is there a pointer? That some stuff happened here where I didn't exactly go on the trip I'd initially planned. But that's okay, because I think I went on a much better trip than I actually planned. So a day before I was about to head out for my trip, I got an email from the parks office that I had contacted about a month prior, informing me to a Ccc tour in southern Pennsylvania. So I quickly got in my car, and I knew that this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity because this tour was with the CCC Legacy, but also a CCC author and the man responsible for plotting most of the CCC camps throughout Pennsylvania. And this was in Laurel Hill, Pennsylvania. And this was an amazing way to network from the very start. This is how I got to meet a lot of people along the way because they put me in contact with different historians and people to contact throughout my journey that I'm still in contact with throughout the process of my directed research. They even directed me to my very first plantation, which was at the edge of this particular park's perimeter. And this was an incredibly exciting experience for me. I got out of my car and jumped up and down because I didn't actually know I would be able to find one of these so quickly. And So as I mentioned before, it does take the form of these conifers planted in rows, which is drastically different from the wild, tangled forest to the east that I had come across as I was driving. And this is also when I realized that pines are incredibly tall and not necessarily easy to hand draw by section. So I kind of quickly did not carry through with that as much as I thought I was going to. So I did take a quick pit stop because I was out in the middle of nowhere, and I did find the Flight 93 Memorial along the way, which I highly recommend stopping by if you're in the middle of nowhere, Pennsylvania. The next part of my journey took me to northern Pennsylvania, Allegheny State Park and Parker Dam State Park, where I continued to find more of these CCC Plantations sites, including one which is now, I guess, a camping area, as you can see with this public bench, but also my very first spruce plantation. In Allegheny State Park, it was hard to keep track of the number of pine plantations I found, as they covered most of the roadsides in the northern part of the park. I should also note that these parks had a lot of interpretive material on the actual structures by the CCC, but almost nothing on the plantings. Yeah, okay. That's a common thread I found along the way. Perhaps one of the most interesting things I just wanted to note that I found in Allegheny State Park, built by the CCC, was this constructed zoo where they used to house wild animals that they would collect throughout the park and put them on display throughout the year. As you can see, this was a bear den. This is the bear. And then in these boxes here, they used to put foxes and porcupines and then put glass covers over them and put them on display and release them at the end of, I think they said, the fall season, so they didn't have to stay in there during the winter. I think we can note that their conservation efforts are a little bit different than those today based on said zoo. After my tour of Pennsylvania and New York, I didn't actually find any additional plantations that I was looking for, which I guess is unfortunate, but not entirely lost, as it helped me narrow my field of future research. And so a lot of my trip was, about a week's worth of my trip was actually spent in the federal archives. I'd like to say that archiving is a process. I had not had any archiving experience outside of visiting the Ohio History Connection once or twice, and I had found myself in a very massive federal archive, learning archiving in the process. I'm thankful for the incredibly helpful and patient research staff that guided me as I was looking to find the material I was looking for and helped me with all the processing and handling. Out of respect for other researchers and security reasons, I don't have pictures of me researching, but I do have some photos of CCC documents I found, including these summary sheets which detail the work accomplished in each state. I was there for about 4 days, and I looked through probably about 20 different file boxes and have way more images on my computer than I could possibly put in this presentation. And so some of the process photos I got were of the actual planting process. They had these lovely before and afters shots, but also processes of them putting trees in the ground. And probably one of my favorite finds included this entire library of pictures of enrollees with turkeys and chickens. And this is when I learned that the CCC camps were given supplementary education in the evenings after their work days. And many enrollees were involved with educational opportunities, including architectural drafting, animal husbandry, welding, and automotive repair. And multiple of these opportunities were available throughout the camps so that these people could be employed after their CCC work. I did also find myself at Dumbarton Oaks for a weekend. I missed Jake Boswell by a day. But when in DC, go see Beatrix Ferrand's work. The next part of my trip brought me to the Shenandoah region. I found myself encased in a field of mist for most of the trip I was there, including a lot of rain to the point where I had to scoop out my tent with a cup. And a power outage actually caused the CCC Interpretive Center I had intended to visit in the park to lose power for 3 days. So I did not get to meet with the park staff that I wanted to, and had to explore the interpretive material via flashlight. But I fortunately got to see the very bit of the interpretive center when the power came back on the day I left. But the better part of my trip was actually spent at the Ccc Legacy, which is a nonprofit responsible for housing alumni events, camp tours, and recording alumni stories. I met Joan Sharp, who runs the entire group out of an old Forest Service office just outside of George Washington National Forest. Joan's office is stacked from wall to wall with filing cabinets, and everything between is stacks of CCC memorabilia. Joan receives shipments of CCC memorabilia from family members who their loved one has died, and now she just has it stacked in her office. She has been spending her retirement sorting through these items and trying to organize them, and is in desperate need of an intern. And there's a wealth of information in her office that she wants to share with the world. She just needs the means to do so. After visiting Joan's office, I visited Camp Roosevelt, which was the first CCC camp in the United States. And there isn't much left of the site that would tell you of its significance other than some interpretive signage. My journey next took me down the Blue Ridge Parkway, where mountain laurel was in full bloom. When it wasn't foggy, I was able to spend some time to appreciate these views. The CCC built many portions of this parkway. There are several great places to stop and see scenic vistas. Keep in mind that the speed limit is between 25 to 45 miles per hour, as it was built at a time when vehicles traveled much slower. I had never visited the Great Smoky Mountains prior to this, but I had studied its view sheds in Main Park Road during a research project during my history class last spring, and I am grateful to have spent time in the park, both meeting with staff and learning about the CCC's legacy in the park, but also was very impressed with how well what such a great job the park has done with maintaining the historic structures of the CCC and interpreting their years in the park. My final stop of the tour was the National Archives in Atlanta, and while I didn't get to spend much time here, I'm grateful for the discoveries I made. The Atlanta Archives is full of large-scale maps, such as this one, which was a map that was continually updated after October 1933, and it depicts the CCC camps across the country with their relative locations. And while I can't tell you when they stopped updating the map, it leaves me with many questions. And what stories do these camps hold? What do their plantings look like? And where can I find more information on them? I like this image as a representation of what archiving is to me. There isn't a clear path to interpret it. You have to stitch information together to tell any sort of story, and there are often overlaps and holes in information. But it's really exciting to begin to create paths to understanding, and this trip opened me to a whole new interest in the potential of research as a landscape architect in this profession. And what I leave you with is one of my drawing studies that I did along my trip.